HighBridge, a division of Recorded Books, presents Solving Modern Problems with a Stone Age Brain, Human Evolution and the Seven Fundamental Motives, by Douglas T. Kenrick, Ph.D., and David E. Lundberg-Kenrick. Read by Chris Sorensen. Introduction. Evolutionary Psychology as a Guide to Self-Actualization. How do you win friends, influence people, achieve success at work, get in shape, and meanwhile find true love, lasting happiness, and meaning in life? Should one of these life challenges take priority over the others? Hordes of motivational speakers tell you how you can win the game of life. By expanding your network of friends, by earning the most money, by attracting lots of romantic partners, or by acquiring the most status. But pursuing these goals as ends in themselves may not solve your problems, and might not make you very happy. Even trying too hard to be happy all the time may take you down the wrong path. Research suggests that doing everything you can to make yourself happy can sometimes paradoxically make you unhappy. Occasionally, you may even want to do things that aren't immediately pleasurable. For example, you will often benefit by leaving the comfort of a nice warm bed to help your friends, coworkers, or family members with an unpleasant task. Indeed, we aren't naturally designed to ever sit back and feel like we've won in a general sense. After we solve one problem on Monday, we wake up on Tuesday and find a new problem to solve. Ditto for Wednesday. Most of us have at least one or two areas of our lives in which there are problems we would really like to solve. You could run down to the local bookstore where you would find dozens of advice books about how to win friends, get ahead, find love, and reach fulfillment. Those books are, for the most part, full of common sense. But alas, much of that common sense is either wrong, or is only right for some of the people some of the time, or is only applicable at some phases of your life as opposed to others. The rules for making a new friend when you're a teenager are quite different from the rules for finding a romantic partner, and you need a whole new set of rules to hold on to a romantic partner. One important point we make in this book is this: we don't win at life. We just solve problems. But as we discuss, solving problems is something human beings are designed to do, and every problem is also an opportunity. Indeed, the very process of meeting life's fundamental challenges is the secret to a truly fulfilling life. Evolutionary Positive Psychology and the Seven Fundamental Motives. The past few decades have seen major advances in our understanding of human nature. A lot of those advances were made in the pursuit of purely scientific goals, to answer theoretical questions about the links between Homo sapiens and other animals, to figure out how the human brain processes information or experiences emotion, or to gauge the differences and similarities between human beings living in widely dispersed cultures, from the Brazilian jungle to outer Mongolia. Along the way, though, the basic science has, almost serendipitously, uncovered precious nuggets of practical wisdom. Those nuggets are often scattered about, sometimes hidden in obscure scientific articles accessible only to those who have a multilingual mastery of arcane jargons found in biology, anthropology, and experimental psychology journals, and a collection of all the practical wisdom from all those decades of interdisciplinary research and theorizing might simply make for an updated and more complicated laundry list. 101 random scientific factoids about this, that, or some other thing. But after years of delving into all this research, we came to a surprising realization. A lot of that emerging wisdom can be organized into a simple and easy-to-visualize scheme, a 7-step pyramid of fundamental human motives. Understanding how those 7 motives operate can help you make more thoughtful choices and ultimately result in a more satisfying and fulfilling life. You might be familiar with Abraham Maslow's hierarchy of needs, which has often been depicted in books on psychology and business as a similar-looking pyramid. Maslow's view was that we all begin life trying to satisfy physiological and social motives, the lower 4 steps in the classic pyramid, which he viewed as deficiency needs. If you satisfy all those deficiency needs, you are free to move on to growth needs. The highest level is self-actualization, or the desire to become all you can become. Maslow's favorite examples of self-actualization were a musician playing music, a poet writing poetry, or an artist painting, not for the praise of others, but solely for the satisfaction of expressing their own self-potential. Maslow proposed his hierarchy of needs as an alternative to the then prevailing behaviorist blank slate model of human nature. According to the old view, social motives, such as the desire for love or friendship or respect from others, are not part of our nature, but are built on more basic physiological needs like hunger and thirst. From that traditional perspective, we only crave love and affection because we associate those social rewards with the milk we received from our mothers. Since Maslow's time, developments in cognitive neuroscience, developmental psychology, and evolutionary biology have lent support to his alternative view, that the human mind comes pre-equipped with several different social motives, and that those separate motives are not simply secondary add-ons to a general hunger-based motivational system. Another of Maslow's contributions was to help turn the field of psychology away from an exclusive focus on the negative, the miserably neurotic and aggressive side of humanity, and toward the study of healthy people. Indeed, Maslow did an intensive study of a number of people he regarded as shining exemplars of healthy and productive human functioning, including public figures such as Eleanor Roosevelt, Abraham Lincoln, Albert Einstein, and John Muir, as well as several of his own colleagues and mentors, including the influential anthropologist Ruth Benedict. As such, Maslow set the stage for more recent developments in positive psychology, which scientifically delves into the causes and consequences of human virtues and well-being, as opposed to simply dwelling on our vices and agonies. Maslow's approach had a lot going for it, but it also had a couple of problems. First, Maslow's theory was, in the style of American society in the 1950s and 1960s, a bit self-centered. He believed that the highest level of human achievement, self-actualization, was a state removed from and above the lower social motives which he saw as based on deficiencies. In contrasting normal people with those self-actualized role models, his favorite examples were artsy poets and musicians pursuing their crafts for themselves, completely independent of the opinions of others. Second, Maslow's focus on self-actualization was quite elitist. So much so that most normal people had little hope of making the grade. In his 1954 book, Motivation and Personality, he observed that of 3,000 college students he and his colleagues interviewed, only one of them qualified as psychologically healthy. One. Another problem is that Maslow's work was done before the modern integration of evolutionary biology and psychology, so he gave no attention to the central Darwinian themes of reproduction. For Maslow, sexual desire was just another one of those physiological deficiencies at the bottom of the pyramid, which presumably could be dispensed with by masturbation to free one to move up to higher needs. Even the desire for love was something Maslow viewed as based on a deficiency. The classic pyramid gets an update. After studying the evolutionary psychology of human motives for almost 2 decades, I, Doug, and several colleagues decided to renovate the pyramid of needs to reflect developments in the behavioral and biological sciences during the half-century since Maslow originally proposed his hierarchy. 2 important things have changed in the new pyramid. First, Self-actualization has been removed from its hallowed place at the top. Why? For one thing, it would make little sense for natural selection to have shaped an organism whose crowning achievement would be to forsake biological and social payoffs and go off to play classical guitar by themselves. More importantly, though, it turns out that there are real social payoffs for artistic and intellectual achievements. Other people respect you, and it may even win you mates. Think of Frida Kahlo and Diego Rivera. Indeed, artistic and intellectual performances advertise a highly functioning brain, and in the parlance of evolutionary biology, good genes. It's not that people don't experience fulfillment from music and intellectual achievements, it's just that those fulfillments are not outside biology, and they are hardly disconnected from the lower social motives. Instead, those higher pursuits are intimately tied to the satisfaction of other, less grand motives. Research from our team suggests that regular people associate self-actualization primarily with achieving status and secondarily with affiliating with their friends. If you have young children, parenting motives become increasingly linked to your sense of self-actualization and meaning in life. Speaking of young children, the new pyramid addresses the missing goal that is paramount from a Darwinian perspective: reproduction. If our ancestors managed to feed themselves, win friends and respect, and then wander off on their own to seek nothing beyond the sheer personal pleasure of drawing pictures on the cave walls, we would not be here to talk about it. Instead, once they were well fed and had accumulated a sufficient bank account of social capital, our progenitors cashed it in to attract a mate. And because humans are mammals, we do not just lay a bunch of eggs and then wander off, as many fish, amphibians, and insects do, for example. All mammals, including our ancestors, have been designed to invest a great deal of resources in their offspring. Among mammals, humans invest more time in parenting than almost any other species, with the possible exception of elephants, which also spend more than a decade raising their calves. But there's one other important way humans stand out from elephants and from 95% of other mammals. In our species, it's not just the mothers who are involved in parenting. Fathers also typically invest heavily in their offspring. So the new pyramid adds 3 more layers associated with reproduction: finding mates, maintaining relationships with those mates, which involves a distinct set of skills from finding them, as some of us have learned, and parenting. Another change is that the motives are not stacked on top of one another, but are shown as overlapping. Psychologists no longer view motives as falling into a linear hierarchy in which the lower motives are left behind in favor of the higher motives. Maslow himself did not arrange the motives into the familiar pyramid shape, but he did describe them as a hierarchy and often distinguished basic needs from higher needs. This has led to a couple of problems. First, it makes it seem as though we can simply forget about one need as we move on to the next one in line. Second, it is an easy mistake to look at the classic pyramid and think, I should really focus on self-actualization. When some people have looked at the new pyramid, they ask, does this imply that I should forget self-actualization and run out and have 50 kids? As we described, that's not how it works. You do not win by jumping up to the top. The overlapping motives in the revised pyramid also explicitly represent the assumption that none of the motives is any more important than any other. We have evolved separate motivational systems for each of the 7 motives, and those systems don't go away as we develop. Instead, they click into action as needed: to get food, keep us safe, attend to our friends, and protect our reputations whenever the need arises. The new pyramid connects with a very old set of human problems. We believe the new pyramid provides a perfect structure for organizing the essential tasks of human life. Rather than a nearly inaccessible peak experience for the chosen few, The potential for growth and self-actualization can be found at every step of the pyramid and in accomplishing the humblest goals of everyday life. Each of the 7 steps in the new motivational pyramid represents one of the core problems that unfolds over the life course: surviving, protecting ourselves from the bad guys, forming friendships, winning respect, attracting mates, hanging on to those mates, and caring for our families. These are the same problems our ancestors needed to solve, and they are also the problems you, me, and your Aunt Mildred in Cleveland need to solve today. Our biggest problems in the modern world are the same problems our great-great-grandparents had to solve back in their old world ancestral village. But despite all the technological advances designed to make life easy in the modern world, there is an ironic twist. The perennial human problems are in some important ways even more difficult to solve today. 2 big factors combine to make the old problems so difficult to solve in today's world. First, the default solutions, the psychological reactions we inherited because they helped our ancestors survive in the ancient world, are not always well matched to our modern circumstances. So we can't just act naturally anymore. The second problem is this: the very strength of our ancestral desires has opened us up to a whole new set of technological parasites in the modern world. A rough map of the terrain we cover. In the first chapter of this book, we go through a to-do list for a prototypical human ancestor, someone living in a small group of hunter-gatherers in the pre-agricultural world. Then we compare the ancestral to-do list with a to-do list for someone living in the modern world. In other words, what did our human ancestors need to accomplish to survive and thrive in human groups? And what can we surmise about their motivations in life? And how do the powerful motivations we inherited from those ancestors help or hinder our attainment of fulfilling lives in today's world? In each chapter that follows, we introduce someone with a uniquely modern problem, like Walter Hudson, a young suburbanite who ate his way up to a weight of 1,197 pounds and couldn't even fit through the doorway to leave his bedroom, or William Bulger, a successful university president who had to decide whether to help the FBI track down his brother, a mob boss responsible for more than a dozen murders. We then visit a traditional society, like the Mysin from coastal New Guinea, or the Ache living deep inside the Paraguayan jungle. We delve into the day-to-day problems these traditional people face in trying to survive, avoid the bad guys, make friends, get ahead, find mates, hang on to those mates, and care for their families. After that, we consider how those same problems unfold for people trying to make it in the more luxurious circumstances of the modern world, with Siri, Alexa, and 1,000 YouTube videos standing ready to help out. Each chapter then taps into research at the interface of evolutionary biology and positive psychology to derive a handful of practical tips about how to solve those perennial problems, while simultaneously avoiding the newly evolved micro-plunderers and robo-parasites that exploit the latest technologies to prey on our powerful ancestral motivations. In the last chapter, we try to extract the most important lessons we've learned. We then come up with a plan to put ourselves and you into the picture. The Naturalistic Fallacy. Osceola McCarty versus Genghis Khan. Understanding our ancestral motivations can be helpful if we want to achieve fulfillment in the modern world, but that does not mean that the path to self-realization is to follow the dictates of genetically determined ancestral motivations. Indeed, we believe the role model for a personally fulfilling life is not Genghis Khan, who was successful in passing on his genes, but a woman named Osceola McCarty, who never had any offspring. Osceola McCarty was an African-American woman born in Mississippi in 1908. She dropped out of school in the 6th grade to help an ailing aunt. Osceola never returned to her education. but went to work washing other people's clothes. She owned a washing machine for a time, but she felt it didn't do a thorough job, so she preferred the old-fashioned method, boiling a pot of water over a fire and washing clothes by hand with a scrubbing board. Although washing clothes might not be everyone's idea of a dream job, Osceola took joy in her occupation. "I loved the work, the bright fire, wrenching the wet, clean cloth, white shirts shining on the line." She stuck with it for 75 years, until at age 86 her arthritis forced her to retire. Osceola never owned a car, and she had to walk a mile with a shopping cart to get groceries at the local supermarket in Hattiesburg, Mississippi. She did not subscribe to a newspaper which she considered too expensive. Her sole extravagance was occasionally watching a small black-and-white television set. The center of her social life was attending services at the Friendship Baptist Church. Although Osceola's income was meager, she saved most of what she earned, and at age 87 had a bank account of $280,000. This is equivalent to $499,179 in 2021 dollars, a substantial sum for someone with essentially no bills to pay. When the trust officer at Osceola's bank asked her how she intended to invest all that money, she gave a surprising answer. She wanted to give it to other people. True to her word, she donated $150,000, more than half of her assets, to the University of Southern Mississippi, requesting that it be used to help poor black students go to college. When President Bill Clinton presented Osceola with the Presidential Citizens Medal for her noteworthy self-sacrifice, she was interviewed by the press. Although proud that her hard-earned money would be used to help young people, she said she regretted she did not have more to give. Her generosity inspired other donors to double her contribution to the scholarship fund and moved the wealthy Ted Turner to give away $1 billion. In the face of all the attention, though, she was a model of humility. "People tell me now that I am a hero. I am nobody special. I am a plain, common person, no better than anybody else. I don't want to be put up on a pedestal. I want to stay right here on the ground." Although you might personally choose someone like the Nobel Prize-winning Jennifer Doudna or the Pulitzer Prize-winning Samantha Power as a role model, we explain in the final chapter why we think that the humble Osceola McCarty had figured out one of the main secrets to a satisfying and meaningful life. There is a common misconception that an evolutionary perspective on human behavior would imply that your ideal role model should not be Osceola McCarty, but rather someone like Genghis Khan, who successfully got his genes into future generations. By one estimate, Genghis Khan has 16 million descendants, roughly 1 out of every 200 people living on Earth today. If the name of the evolutionary game is to replicate your genes, then shouldn't you act like Genghis Khan and lead a life of pillage, murder, and rape, or whatever it takes? The notion that we modern people might want to imitate our most genetically successful ancestors is an example of what evolutionary psychologists and biologists call the naturalistic fallacy, the idea that what is natural is somehow good. The problem with the natural equals good equation should become clear if you consider some of the natural ways in which various organisms replicate their genes. Wasps that paralyze caterpillars and lay their eggs inside their bodies, cuckoos who trick other birds into raising the cuckoo's young, and viruses that deceive their hosts' immune systems. So, although people often advise you to do what feels right for you when deciding on the next step you should take in a love relationship or in your career path, it is often precisely the wrong advice to use the rule, do what comes naturally. Should we instead do as some social scientists have suggested and just ignore biology? Forget how evolution designed your ancestors and just imagine yourself as you want to be? That might sound lovely, but unfortunately all the biological baggage can pose real obstacles to becoming all that you imagine you can be. We imagine ourselves not eating up all the chocolate ice cream, at least not on the first day we bring it home from the store. But that dream can't come true until we learn a psychological trick to defeat our powerful evolved desires for sugar and fat, cravings that were quite adaptive for ancestral humans, as we discuss in Chapter 1. Rather than emulating Genghis Khan and giving free rein to our ancestral selfish desires to kill, rape, plunder, and otherwise self-indulge, we instead need to understand our inner Genghis Khan to help him settle down and enjoy a more civilized life. Besides, whatever barbaric genes we inherited from Genghis Khan, human beings also inherited some universally pleasant characteristics, such as the capacity for love, charity, and lifelong family bonds. So, when people equate a biological perspective with the Hobbesian view that human nature is inherently vicious and selfish, that's a mistake. But so is the Rousseauian view that we are by nature angelic. We all have the capacity for gluttony or self-control, xenophobia or Samaritanism, cooperation or distrust, bullying or mentoring, lifelong love or infidelity, and brotherly love or sibling rivalry. Understanding what triggers those different inclinations can help each of us live a more fulfilling life, and in turn improve the lives of the friends, lovers, and family members whose lives are tied to ours. As we describe, research at the interface of psychology, anthropology, economics, and evolutionary biology has begun to reveal some of those triggers. This book delves beneath those discoveries to uncover suggestions for how we can all be more like Osceola McCarty. Chapter 1. Modern Problems Meet Ancient Human Motives. Are we obsessing over nothing these days? The term first world problem is often used to poke fun at the seemingly trivial issues that concern people living in the modern world. Lost wireless earbuds, slow internet connections, or baristas forgetting to put a design in the foam on top of our double espresso latte. Just look at all the signs of progress in the world most of us now live in. Near universal rates of literacy, longer lifespans, antibiotics, heart transplants, air travel, supermarkets richly stocked with organic decaffeinated coffee beans, and fresh blueberries and kiwis from South America and New Zealand. And how about the amazing panoply of everyday technological devices? Self-driving cars and digital wristwatches that allow you to take phone calls, send text messages, play your favorite tunes, remember a doctor's appointment, check today's weather in Seattle and New York at the same time, and even self-administer an electrocardiogram, all without having to lift your rear end off your double-padded vibrating massage chair with the built-in drink holder for your ginger turmeric kombucha. These amazing advances in technology can be found not only in the sleek urban districts of Singapore and London, but in most parts of the globe today. Whether you're living in a $1 million high-rise in Bahrain or a small village in a rural part of Paraguay, there's a decent chance you have some pretty nifty modern conveniences, such as a television or a cell phone that brings you into contact with the rest of the modern world. So, should you just relax, chill out, stop whining like a spoiled toddler and realize that whatever you've been obsessing about this week is no more significant than a bad Wi-Fi connection or a temporary shortage of your favorite double chocolate brownie at the local hipster coffee house? It's easy to imagine that if any one of our ancestors were resurrected into modern London, Madrid, Sydney, Singapore, Buenos Aires, or Cape Town, their first impression would be that they had landed in paradise. They would mock the local residents for complaining about their trivial everyday problems. But your resurrected ancestors might want to take a closer look, because first impressions of the modern world can be deceiving. If you actually delve more deeply into the problems that concern us in the modern world today, they are not such a joke at all. On the contrary, We folks living in the latte-sipping, smartphone-connected, postmodern, post-industrial world are still dealing with all the same problems that our hunter-gatherer ancestors faced on the grasslands of North Africa. And in some...
Sample complete. Ready to continue?